Alright, so in this next tutorial, we're gonna animate and manipulate and tune the opacity. So back to this, right? I select slide in, right? And then we're gonna go back to animate, right? Like I said, this guy right here, animate, it's like it's like I said, compartmentalizing specific types of movements and stuff. You could click on it, and last time we chose position. This time I'm going to choose opacity. Right, I'm going to click it. Watch what's going to happen. Boom. It made again and another animator 1. Right. I'm going to press enter. I'm going to put down, type in s.i. for slide in. I'm going to put a space, and then instead of animator 1, I'm going to delete the 1, put a little dash and a space. I'm going to type in opacity, hit enter. That way we know what each little compartmentalized portion does, right? Opacity. And you have your again your range selector 1, right? So I'm going to start at frame 0. So this is for opacity. See? Opacity. Whereas the previous one, right, was position. Okay? I'm going to close it. Go to opacity. Crack it back open. Frame 0, right? Frame 0, frame 0. I'm going to hit on the start. I'm going to click on the stopwatch. Click it. There you go. There it is. Alright. And then I'm going to go to frame 18. And I'm going to explain why I chose 18 and why I chose blah 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 blah, this other stuff. You see this dot? Right? These are keyframes, but they're dots because that compartmentalized section has been closed. See? That's the reason why it's a dot. But these are just to symbolize there are keyframes. Right. So at frame 18, right? So I'm gonna have this right here. There's no keyframes. I'm gonna hover over it, right? Opacity, right? See the opacity, right? This start 0% to 100% is related to opacity, meaning that this guy is all about opacity. Anyway, frame 18, right? I'm gonna crank it to 100%. I'm gonna slide it left and right. I want you to look at the here, right? I'm gonna slide it left to right. See how what it's doing? Its behavior. So I set it to 100%. 100% moves it from left to right. Okay. But you notice that it didn't do jack, right? It didn't do nothing, right? It didn't do anything, right? So, you might be tempted to try to animate opacity, right? But we're not going to do that, okay? What we're going to do instead is in here. I mean, you can, right? But I already worked through this, and just don't bother right now, right? So what we're gonna do instead is again, crack open the range selector. I'm not, like I said, don't be tempted to animate opacity, right? Just leave it alone for now. Under advanced, crack it open. Okay. And then, oh, ignore that. And don't crack open advanced. Just leave it alone. Instead, under opacity, we're not going to animate it. I'm just going to hover over it, left mouse click, and drag it to 0. I did not set a key, right? It's not blue. So I set to 0. So basically, at the starting, right? Start 0%. I take it like this 0% is basically the strength of the opacity of how much. Even though opacity has its own 0%, see, and start has a 0%. This is when you start learning. It'll most likely will confuse the hell out of you. Like, isn't this the same shit? Basically, you know, you'll be thinking to yourself. But there's subtle nuances to this, right? Anyway, so we set it to 0. I did not set a key. We just set it to 0. So look what happens. I'm gonna scrub it. See, I'm gonna press spacebar once to play it. Now I'm gonna scrub it. So a little bit, you know, a little bit better, right? It fades in. It kind of reveals itself that way, right? So that's what happened. So basically, with my bad English, what you can interpret is that at frame 0, right? Frame 0, 0% start. And then opacity is also at 0, right? See, 0 and 0, but there's a key for your start, frame 0. And then all the way to frame 18 is at 100. But opacity is still at 0. So you may be thinking, why do we still see it? Well, this is where that little nuance comes into play. At 100%, you could interpret it as though it's saying 100% visibility. You could kind of interpret it as that. Because right now, even though the opacity is at 0, right? So at frame 18, range selector, start is at 100. Is at 100. 100% full power. But at frame 0, the strength is at 0%. So this doesn't necessarily mean start and end, you know, start here, end here. Well, it can, right? But I take it as the strength of it, right? As a sliding scale, the strength of it. And when I say the strength of it meaning what you have chosen under animate. You know, we chose opacity, right? This compartmentalized section is for opacity, whereas this compartmentalized section was for position. Because remember, when we first did this, we chose position, right? And this one we chose opacity. And that's why the start, right? You'd be tempted to screw around with this, but just leave it alone. It will just want to pull your hair out. Just leave it the hell alone. For now, just mess with this. 0 strength to 100% strength, meaning that 100% strength for the opacity, even though the freaking opacity is set to 0. This is why when you're first learning, it will confuse the hell out of you. That's why I'm trying to do what I can to kind of explain, you know, the asinine nature of this thing, right? You just get used to it, and you can understand its behavior and its quirks, and you know, you learn to work with it and work around certain things, and it is flexible. Flexible meaning that you could replace entire words, right? And then it'll, you know, it'll apply and make changes on the fly and be smooth like butter. Okay. Anyway, so we did that. That's all we did. Yeah. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna stop the video here. This is already at like what, almost 10 minutes. And I'm gonna, the next video I'm gonna go over tracking, making another animator, right? Animator 1. Like I said, I call it compartmentalizing specific attributes to animate, right? So next video I'm gonna go over tracking, to get more kick out of this thing, right? So that's it. Bye.